This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I have a roll call, please, clerk.
Chairman Goodman?
Here.
Mayor Brummel?
Here.
Alderman Ashar?
Here.
Alderman Berry?
Here.
Alderman Davalos?
Here.
Alderman Krischel?
Here.
Alderman Widener?
Here.
Alderman Wilson?
Here.
You have a quorum that's present.
Thank you. Since we do have a quorum, and we've received notice by a member of the council in accordance with our electronic attendance policy that the member is authorized to attend the meeting electronically unless there's a motion objecting to the electronic attendance. Seeing none, Alderman Anderson, are you present?
I am. Good evening.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the time we set aside for citizens' comments, and I have one tonight. Bob Siebert, you know the drill.
Bob Siebert, Albright Court. You should congratulate Alderman Anderson on his new employment position. Alderman Anderson is now Chief Operating Officer at Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Good luck.
Thank you. If there's anyone who has called in and would like to speak, please let us know if you're on the phone right now. All right, seeing none. We'll move on from that. Clerk, do we have any email comments for tonight?
None.
None. All right. We'll move on to the officials and staff comments, and I will start with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a reminder that National Night Out is coming up at the beginning of August. Check out the details at our website. Always a wonderful time. Lots of presenters, lots of free stuff for the kids, and lots of fun. And we're hoping for good weather and free food, by the way. So come on out. The fire department will be there, as well as the police department, and magicians and all kinds of fun stuff for the kids. It's a big family event. So beginning of August, I believe it's August 3rd, if I'm correct, in the evening at Cerny Park. So come one, come all.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there other officials and staff who wish to make a comment tonight? Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. I don't know if this is the time to bring this up, but when I find these things, I oftentimes, this is something in the...
Good evening, everybody. Could I get a sound check? I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear you, Chief. Alderman Davalos, go ahead.
I'm not hearing any audio from anybody.
Okay, Chief, we can hear you. We hear you. Yes. Alderman Davalos, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. There was something that appeared in the weekly report that comes out to elected officials, staff, people that work for the city. And it was about a conference that Director Menser attended on what they called it is Future of Chicago Suburbs Symposium. And it just struck me that sometimes I like to explain or be part of other people in a group explaining why we do things, and why we do new things. And I'm not going to read this whole report on this, but what struck me was what they said as they gave trends and explanations of why things have changed. They talked about the pandemic, but the last 2 points, they talked about not just Chicago area, but all over the country, we are over retailed was one of the trends they said. And I think about this because a lot of people have come forward from the public and from other places in the city to say, why can't we have more places to eat? Why can't we have different grocery stores? Why can't we have a Home Depot, a Lowe's? Why can't we do all these things? As if the city was in charge of creating that demand. And what they're saying here is we have too many stores. And so we can't just want that. They have to want to be here, and they have to feel that this is the location that they want. And we get new businesses all the time that work out great, but it's not because the city is totally directing that. You have to go with the demands of economy and what's going on in the country. And I think we have done that. I think our community development department has done that. One of the comments said there is a strong and growing demand for mixed-use projects that provide a wider variety of work, shopping, entertainment, and housing choices. And these are the things that are being successful. And so what that means to me is we can't keep doing things the way we always have done things. We can't keep building what we've always built. We can't keep trying to fill up places that are empty with what we've always developed them to be. Things are changing. People want different things, and we have to be open to these creative new things, which I think you see happening in Cantera. Cantera is never going to be what Cantera, at least not totally, was developed to be. There's going to be new things, and thank goodness we're allowing that to happen. And the choices we have made, these kind of apartments and townhouses together, not just in Cantera, but other places, have become hugely successful. We have one going on now that isn't even totally built yet, and it's already filled up. There is a huge demand for this. We have to be open to this sort of thing. And the last comment, and I'm saying this because our staff is doing this, and I'm not sure the community really completely understands what a great staff we have, because they are open to these things. They're thinking outside the box. They're helping elected officials to think outside of the box. They are reading like crazy. They're paying attention. They're going to symposiums. And so because of all of that together, we are creating an environment. We are executing exactly what this symposium is talking about. And the last sentence is, and then I will stop, the last sentence is, communities that consistently embrace change are adaptable and flexible and have a culture of working collaboratively with real estate investment and development community to respond to ever-changing market demands and preferences are the ones that will be the most successful and sustainable in the future. And if we are successful and sustainable, one of the many effects of that is that your tax rate and your tax amount that you pay taxes to our community will stay low. And we will not have to keep coming back to ask you for more money, because we've done some of these things that will get a very strong tax base for us that will keep our taxes low, and it's what everybody wants. So that was a little bit long, but I just think sometimes it doesn't get said, and that the more we can help people to understand what the future needs to look like for us to be a continued viable community just needs to be talked about. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Davalos. Any other aldermen that wanted to make a comment at this time? All right, I had one item. I want to make sure that we give our congratulations to Wheaton Warrenville South's 2021 Distinguished Educator Award recipient, Mrs. Gloria Latta, who happens to be my 9th grade biology teacher. She spent 33 years working in District 200 and said in her acceptance speech that the District 200 newsletter sent around to everybody how important it's been for her to encourage students to work with real data and understand how to think about science as a process that affects all of us every day in real life. And that is one of the things I remember about her. So congratulations to Mrs. Latta. It's a well-deserved award. All right, I don't see any other officials or staff comments, so we'll move on to the business of the meeting. The first item today is consideration of amendments to the employee mission statement and the city's vision and values statement. If I could have Sarah Phelan, the chair of our IDAC committee, come forward, that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alderman Goodman. I am actually here tonight on behalf of our chair, Betsy Dudak, who couldn't be with us this evening, but I'm very happy to be with you all. Perhaps some of you might know me as the museum director here in town, and I must say I am very happy and excited to be serving on the IDAC commission. As Alderman Davalos mentioned, things change. We are very happy, although I am a historian, that Warrenville has wrapped its arm around change and really embraced new things. And one of those is the Inclusivity, Diversity, and Equity Commission. We really think that the changes that we have proposed push further to make sure that everyone in Warrenville feels welcomed and included in the community. And I know that I'm speaking on behalf of the full commission when I state that we are all very excited about the work and pushing this forward here in the city of Warrenville. Overall, we took over a course of several meetings to look at the former employee mission statement and the city's vision and value statement. We took different opinions of all of the commissioners. We drafted and redrafted more inclusive language about what Warrenville currently is and what it aspires to be. This was also in response to the past year and a half, some of the global calls for more broader community-based lenses to view things through. And we also wanted to point that we didn't actually remove anything that existed in the prior statements. We merely reorganized and revised to make sure that there was inclusive language and to ensure that we were reflecting the entire community and those that we want to attract to Warrenville. We do know that pushing these types of movement forward helps people who live in the community feel more welcomed and included. Therefore, they are better citizens, more active in the community, and we really hope that that pushes that goal forward.
All right, thank you. I want to make my apologies to the chairman, Betsy Dudak, for that mistake.
No worries.
Do we have any questions for Sarah or comments on the backup materials? Alderman Davalos.
Are we just talking about the employee mission statement or both?
All of them.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah.
I think I was part of writing this first one, and as I read it, before I read yours, I made some notes on the side. I thought, gee, we should be talking about this or this. And then I go, oh, the new one is right next to it. So I'm on the next page. It's really good, I think. It addressed some of the questions that I would have been asking tonight. And it's wordsmithed really well. And I think it really updates where we are today and where we want to be. And it needed to be done. And I didn't realize it needed to be done until I read both of them side by side. So thank you for all the efforts and for the team's efforts. They're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Yeah, my impression is very similar. I think it's quite clear reading these two that the new one is preferable, that it's thoughtful, that it's taking into account our diverse and wonderful community in a more holistic way. And I think you guys have done a great job with this.
Thank you.
Mary, yes.
I would echo what the Alderman said also, and thank you very much. This is, of course, what I envisioned for this commission to do, these sort of things, to bring us up to date where we should be in terms of making our community a place where people want to be, where they're safe, and where they're accepted for who they are. So thank you so much. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So I'm very supportive of the language that's here. I think it's very well written. I guess just a couple of technical questions. The original one was called an employee mission statement. Is this still an employee mission statement, or is it a something else mission statement?
My understanding is that it is still the employee mission statement.
Okay. And I'm curious the thinking one thing I kind of liked about the old vision were the commitment statements, because they kind of generated a roadmap. They generated a roadmap around public transportation, whatchamacallit, bike, commitment to bicycle and pedestrian pathways, commitment to supporting schools. It was a little bit of, we actually made some decisions of these are things that we're going to focus on, where the new moves us kind of away from more tactical commitments and more to kind of an aspiring perspective on the things that we do. And I assume that was a conscious decision, but I'm curious if anyone either in the process or if staff had any reactions to moving away from the commitment statements.
So I will note that one reason that we did move some of those to more aspirational goals is based on the idea of a vision statement is something that you are aspiring to attain as a community. And we do have a 3-year work plan that have more action items in them that directly relate to ways that we feel Warrenville can move forward through policy, through events, through planning to actually reach things that are more action oriented. And so that was one reason why we did change some of those. Staff member White has also been phenomenal in helping us word sometimes our wording, and actually some of the wording that we were reworking felt a little too strong for what a municipality actually has control over, whether those are things that fall under the school district or the park district. And so we also wanted to massage some of the language where you might see foster positive, support accessibility, support and collaborate, where we felt that perhaps it wasn't, we didn't want to put the onus on the municipality, on the city of Warrenville directly. And that's why some of that change was made as well.
Was that part of the logic? The supporting quality schools was, I was trying to cross map, I'm sure you guys did that a ton. Was that part of the logic of pulling that particular statement out?
It was, and we actually still have the supporting, let me find where the schools are. I know we talked about educational overall. So if you see encourage equitable educational opportunities about halfway down, and commitments to lifelong learning, because we also thought it was really important to call out the wonderful library, selfishly the museum, other organizations that do education throughout the community that isn't solely focused around schools. And part of this is also Warrenville is going to have a wonderful state-of-the-art home across the street for senior residents. And we also feel that lifelong learning is actually something that's very valuable. We have wonderful resources throughout the community, whether it's nature landscapes, to more educational based book learning. And we really felt like that was a more global statement.
Okay.
And then it also references supporting partners and overlapping taxing districts. So that could refer to, for example, COD or District 200, et cetera. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Alderman Anderson.
I think my question, not questions, but I think seeing the actual work plan will probably prove helpful to me. I just think if I'm a citizen, if I read the new statements, I think we reach a lot of the goals that we want to reach with the messages that we're trying to send. I think the old statements felt a little bit more tangible. I kind of felt a little bit more like I knew what the council was going to be doing. But I hear what you're saying, that while that's probably true, that's the essence of the work plan that's created, and that will also be a public document, so we'll be able to get there. So thank you for all your work. Wordsmithing is never easy, and clearly there was a lot of thought that was put into this, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos.
Yes, listening to Alderman Anderson's questions, I'm sort of going back to when this was done. And I was on the council at the time, I believe, and how this worked was we had the vision statement that sort of was aspirational and sort of guided us. And then we translated the next step was the strategic plan. And maybe City Administrator Coakley or another alderman that is how I remember that went. And the strategic plan was all about action items. It was taking this vision statement, I think we had maybe 6 categories, maybe 7, and transferring it into actual measurable action items that we would be thinking about as long as that strategic plan was the one that we were working from. So I think there was a follow-up document, I guess, is what I was trying to say. And also, now, to me, the employee mission statement is a different piece of work here than the council vision statement. So is that, those are 2 different things, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And so the old council vision statement has become the new council mission statement? Is there, or is it the same? This is this isn't a big point. I'm just, as I'm listening to other people make comments, I'm thinking, oh, wait, maybe I don't have it straight. So the old one was called council mission statement, and this one is called mission statement, but I assume it's council mission statement.
So the employee mission statement is the overarching for the city, but we did, if you see the council values statements in the old version, we did alter that, making one mission statement that was more comprehensive and overarching for a quick view, breaking it down into the bullet points, and then outlining those 5 values that you see at the bottom,
Right.
so that they stand clear. We also really looked at over 15 other municipalities who have gone through this and looked at what their literature and websites also looked at, the blocking, and got quite a few ideas from that into how best work the flow. So the values and vision are now broken out into a mission statement, a vision value statement, and then the restatement of the
okay,
values.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Alderman Widener.
Yeah, I had the privilege and honor of being part of this group, and it was a very positive group of people to work with. We had conducted most of our meetings online rather than in person because of pandemic circumstances. And it was a very thoughtful group, very impressive with the outcomes of what they were able to put together, and the research that was conducted on trying to present something to the city council that was appropriate was, I think, very well thought out. And I appreciate all the members' involvement with this and all their great work. And with that, I would like to make a motion to recommend the city council approve the revisions to the employee mission statement, the city's vision and values statements.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Widener, a second by Alderman Davalos. If there's any further discussion, raise your hand. Can I have a voice vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your work on this committee.
Happy to.
All right, item number 2 is a request for an alderman to serve as the council liaison on the Bicyclist and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. We will go to Mayor Brummel. Mayor?
Or turn it on, maybe that might help. Let's do that. I have a person who's the backup if no one else volunteers tonight. So I'm giving all of you one last chance for immortality and fame on the Bicycle Commission. And Alderman Berry. Alderman Berry called me earlier today and volunteered. She said, if no one else would do it, I'll be happy to do it. And I assured her that it's a great group. They do good work and she will enjoy the prospect. So if someone would like to make the motion to appoint Alderman Berry in this position.
As long as they don't make me ride a bike, I'll be fine.
You can be a pedestrian on the
Fair enough.
Bicyclist and Pedestrian. Pedestrians count.
Pedestrian I can handle.
Yeah,
The bike.
absolutely.
All
Do I
right.
have a motion?
Alderman Davalos, I'm sorry, you're the chair.
Yes, please, Alderman Davalos,
I'm
if you'd
just
like
going
to
to make the motion.
Thank
Are
you.
we okay with that? Okay, good, wonderful.
In the chair.
I move to recommend the city council designate Alderman Berry to serve as the city council liaison to the Bicyclist and Pedestrian Advisory Commission.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Alderman Davalos, second by Alderman Barry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to item 3, which is an informational update on illegal fireworks special enforcement detail activity. Chief Toronto, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. And thank you, Chairman, Mayor, and Alderman. I'm sorry I'm not there to join you in person tonight, but I started over the weekend with what my doctor diagnosed as either an ear and or sinus infection. I'm on an antibiotic, so I did not want to come and infect anybody. I spoke with the administrator today who granted permission to be able to do this remotely. So just so that you're aware, we started this in 2017, and we have done this annually to do special emphasis on fireworks enforcement over the 4th of July holidays. And we begin every year on June 1st, and we approach it in a multifaceted type of way, in that we look to inform people and educate them, and also do enforcement when necessary. We put things out on the city's Facebook page for social media. Also, we have developed a informational brochure for every Warrenville resident that we stop on a traffic stop for an unrelated matter, that we hand them this pamphlet that has to do with the information on the fireworks ordinance, including the dangers of the fireworks, the fines and what have you, the ancillary dangers of potential house fires if they land on a roof. Asphalt roofs obviously have, since it's a petroleum-based product, it has the ability to catch fire. It causes stress to people with PTSD and underlying anxiety conditions, as well as pets. And ask them to be cognizant of this. And then finally, we go out and we do the enforcement. And the enforcement is a period of time before and after the holiday. In this time, this year it was from June 26th through July 7th, which was 180.5 hours of special enforcement dedicated strictly to the detection and the enforcement of our fireworks ordinances. So based on that, I will give you a little bit of information of what we did. We went out, we had uniformed officers. We used a multifaceted approach of the types of vehicles that we used. We used some unmarked vehicles, we used some marked vehicles, we used some bicycles. And what we did was we had 24 calls for service that were investigated. Now, it's noteworthy to let you know that during these calls that were called in for fireworks complaints, we did not have a specific individual indicating that there are fireworks at this specific address and I want to see an officer and I would be willing to sign a complaint. Rather, it was, I'm hearing fireworks and they appear to be in the area of what have you, Batavia and Route 59, which gives you a fairly large area in order to try and locate this. So that being said, we had 15 self-initiated events where the officers were out there on their own, saw the activity, made a stop, wrote a citation. 14 of these people were cited. We had a 20-gallon container of confiscated fireworks that were destroyed by the DuPage County Sheriff's Office bomb squad. We have this container at the back of the police department. It's a large barrel that's filled with water. If we confiscate these, we put them in the water to try and deactivate any type of explosive material and the fuses. The bomb squad is called after our event is over. They pick it up and destroy it. However, they would normally do that in a safe manner. And at least one individual voluntarily turned in the fireworks. So for the period of time that we have done this, there was an overtime cost of approximately $12,700. $663.97. And that was an approximate cost based on probably more conservative cost based on the average overtime salary of a police officer doing that. So it did not appear to be too terribly bad. I don't think we're ever going to get like to have 100% compliance and I don't think any of that will ever happen. One thing that was kind of interesting to note is that a large number of complaints came in when the city fireworks display was going off. So I don't know if people heard that and decided to call in based on that. But in any event, I was proud of the job that our officers did, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the aldermen if they have any.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for Chief Toronto? Alderman Davalos.
Just a quick one. You said here that there's 14 citations. Was there any fees collected? Did it come to that point where the officers felt that, because I know we have a violation fee that we talked about before. Was any money ever collected for that? Or were they just citations?
That's a minimum of a $250 fine for every citation that is written. I don't have any figures on what may have been paid. Some people, and obviously every individual has the due process right to go through the administration adjudication process, at which point they will be given a hearing date. So those fines may be collected in the future, but I don't have any information right now as to any type of fines that were collected.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Widener.
Yes, thank you to you and your staff, Chief. The results are noticeable, I think, in the community from this program that's been acted on for several years now. And I truly appreciate the communications effort. That's something that I wasn't aware of that was going to take place, that I've been most impressed with. The signboard, the bulletins, and the work that your officers do when they're stopping individuals for other infractions and giving them notice that we're serious about enforcing the fireworks regulation. I guess my only question is, now that we've got a track record, if the program were somehow scaled back with the amount of overtime hours going from 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. until 2 a.m., how would you react to some suggestion to reducing the costs and scaling it back somehow?
Well, Alderman, that's an interesting question, and it's something we can always try and experiment with. The reason that we came up with those hours that we had people out there doing this was we looked at a basically time graph of when the majority of these calls came in, the complaints, and it was between those hours that we decided to assign the officers. That included the days before and the days after. And a lot of that depends on the day of the week the 4th of July falls. If it's on a weekday, a Tuesday, Wednesday, for example, a lot of people, they have to go to work the next day. So you're not going to have the proliferation of celebratory activity on a Tuesday evening if people have to go to work on Wednesday as you would on a Friday or Saturday night when they're going to be off the next day. So we try and gauge it like that, but that's something we can also consider, and we can definitely try that next year. I wouldn't advertise that openly, but we can definitely go out there and see if a reduction in the hours would have the same type of impact.
Thanks again for your hard work, and mum's the word.
Thank you.
Okay. I had a question myself about the informational brochure for Warrenville residents. Is this the kind of brochure that we, have to spend a lot on making copies of, or is it something fairly inexpensive that we could give out at neighborhood roll calls and events like that? Maybe even National Night Out, just about fireworks safety, or other times when the police interact with Warrenville residents, not just at traffic stops?
Yeah, absolutely. These are done in-house. They're basically Xerox copies. We've done a nice format on a Word document, and it just basically indicates the danger of fireworks. The majority of these are manufactured overseas. There is no reliability on the type of fusing that is used to detonate these particular fireworks. If you saw over the 4th of July weekend, we had a very tragic incident where you had an NHL goalie that was a young man, 23 years old, I believe, was killed because a large firework mortar struck him in the chest and caused a traumatic internal injury, which proved to be fatal. And I think a lot of people that are unfamiliar with fireworks don't understand when you get into these larger type of fireworks, it would be like in the military. You have two types of injuries that occur. With a grenade or a mortar or something like that, you would have the shrapnel injury from the exploding metal that's around the projectile, but you also have a concussive injury that would occur if you're in a certain blast radius. And when you get into these mortars and these half stick, quarter stick dynamite type of fireworks, these large explosive devices, they're very, very dangerous. And you don't have a reliable fusing mechanism. So this is what we try and instill in the public, is that, it's just, you're taking a horrible risk. They had a young man this year that was in the southern suburbs, I believe lost his hand, and it was the same type of an issue. An undetonated fuse, it didn't go off. He walked closer to the thing, and then the thing detonated, and he lost his hand. So it's like, leave these to the professionals. And I'll tell you something, if you go to a professional fireworks display, you don't see them lighting these things with a match or anything like that. They're done like it would be done in the military, with a detonator and an electronic controlled device that will ignite the detonator and set off the fuse, but they're far enough away that they're not going to be injured. So leave it to the professionals, and I just wish to God people would adhere to this. And because it's not that we don't want to discourage people from having fun, we just don't want people to get themselves where they have a permanent injury or potentially fatal injury from using these things.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, brochures that are educational that could be made available to the public. I know the neighborhood roll call that I attended was very well attended. And I think every one of those people would have taken a brochure and walked away with that and taken a look at it if we'd had them available. So maybe that's an idea for the future.
Good point, Chairman, and I will make sure that next year we have those available during the summer months when we do the neighborhood roll calls. I appreciate the information.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any other comments or questions on this item? It's informational only. All right, thank you. We will move on to item number 4, which is our financial update, and we'll go to Finance Director Dahlstrand to begin that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to share my screen here if I can get it to play along. And let's see what we got here. We sent out to you on Friday a financial update for the month of July. We had indicated that we would be providing you regular updates, and this is the first of those updates. There are some things I need to provide some information about here. The first report is a report that shows on some major revenues where they will end up at the end of fiscal year 2021. The vast majority of them are on the upswing. The gap is being closed to where we were even as recently as the month of February. I have up on the board here the state shared sales tax. And if you look in the month of February, there was about a $26,000 gap between where we were in the previous 12 months and then the most recent 12 months. That gap now is close to a little over $4,000. The receipts we received during the end of the fiscal year were a very good upturn for us. Both returns that we received were in excess of $200,000 a month, which is not a number we normally see. In addition to just the upturn in there, there is also some money from online sales that is going into that as well. Don't know the exact amount of that yet, but we're working on defining that as well. So I wanted to make sure I shared that with you. If we go on and look then also at the, of course, hold on just a second. I lost one. Anyway, we'll move on. The home rule sales tax, which is in your backup, but I do not have the slide on the screen for some unknown reason. That gap has closed extremely well. Also, we did end up the fiscal year again with some nice high receipts. Those are collected by the state of Illinois, remitted to us. That gap is about a $7,000 gap. When you look back in the month of February, that gap was almost a $26,000 gap. So we're starting to see some really nice recovery on the revenue that we are receiving. The one I have on the screen now is the state shared use tax. That actually has been up all year long. The remittances from the state right now are showing about a $9,000 improvement over where it was the prior 12-month period of time. So that's extremely good to hear as well. Even the food and beverage tax is starting to make a little bit of a comeback. It still has a fairly sizable gap from what it's used to seeing, but they're starting to see some improvement in there as well. That gap is about a $14,000 gap. We're $14,000 worse than we were a year ago. But again, as you can see by this, that is on the upswing as well. So it's starting to look good as all the restaurants begin to reopen and come out of COVID and actually have people on site and are able to do the things they actually do. So we're starting to see some improvement there as well. State shared income tax, about a year ago from now, started actually to increase and has been on the upswing all year long. There's a really nice gap between where we are now and where we were a year ago. It's about a $25,000 improvement per month that we're seeing. And again, that's money remitted by the state to us. So the fact that has been up all year has been a big help to our general fund overall to help offset some of the losses we've seen in some of the other areas. Move on a little bit to the amusement tax, which is where we still have an issue. As you're aware, it was an issue all year long. It's showing a very slight increase as things start to reopen again. As we move into 2022, we should start to see that gap close again. Now that Regal is open, even to any degree, the fact that they're open is going to help us. The main contributor during this last year was Main Event. The fact that they were open and actually able to do some things was an extreme help. With Regal opening up in May, we'll start to see that, as I said, reported in the fiscal 2022 numbers. Electric utility tax and natural gas use tax, there's not a lot happening there. They don't change very much. They're pretty staid year to year. You can see the line on the electric utility tax is virtually flat. It's been that way for a long time. We should start to see maybe a little bit of an increase in both the electric utility tax and the natural gas utility tax as we get some new residents in town, we start to fill up some of the new development in town, you know, Everton, Lexington Trace, those things. We're projecting that over time, there will be about a $30,000 increase in revenue from all the new residents in town to these two revenue streams that help fund the CMRP. The local motor fuel tax, which we report on all during the year as part of our COVID updates, has been on the upswing, and it's been largely on the upswing due to the new Thornton station on Route 59. It's almost solely made our trend increase, as it's performing so far ahead of the other stations in town that it's actually been a significant boost to our overall trend, and that continues to be the case. It's performing by itself better than probably 3 of the other stations combined. So it's doing an exceptional job and really helping fund the CMRP, and I expect that to continue as we go. The Telecommunications Tax has been a long-standing issue that we've had. It's been on decline for a number of years, and it continues to do that. We've been discussing that for a long time, and we do expect that to continue to occur. It's one of the areas that as people cut the cords for their home, internet, and that kind of thing will continue to go down as well. So that's one of the things that the CMRP work group has been working to address and discuss as part of their ongoing efforts. For 2021, I'll finish up here with the hotel tax. It's starting to recover a little bit as well through the end of April. There's just a very slight upswing there. There's about a $36,000 gap at the end of April, and then that'll allow me to jump ahead to the beginning of fiscal 2022 and show that gap has already started to close considerably. That gap is now down to about an $18,000 gap. The hotels have started to recover. We were talking this last week about the fact that it seemed that business travel has started to increase even beyond what we thought originally might happen. So there's certainly some increase in here. We're only able to report 2 months of this at this point due to the accrual accounting nature of what's happening. This was one of the only funds that has a single source that allows us to look at just the revenue within that fund and see what's happening with that one in particular. If you look at the CMRP, it's got multiple sources, some of which are controlled by the state and collected and remitted to us, and there's a large gap between when that's collected and remitted to us. So it really does not allow us to show what's happening in that fund right up to date. So right now, the hotel tax is the one that's more under our control and a little bit easier to show you exactly where things stand as of right now.
Thank you very much, Director Dahlstrand. We're going to go to Administrator Coakley next.
Thank you, and thank you, Kevin. I just wanted to add 2 kind of reminders. Kevin just went over the fiscal year 21 kind of final numbers that we have, the unaudited, but the final numbers that we have actually had. So that's what came in as, or what's recorded. I'm going to stumble into accounting here. Sorry. Kevin's laughing. But it's basically a reflection of fiscal 21 revenues. That's what I'm trying to say. Secondly, those revenues that we have been reporting through the last year, we call it the COVID report, was to reflect the impact of the pandemic on the market sensitive revenues. This isn't intended to give a fiscal analysis of the entire city, although these are the more volatile revenues. So if these are doing better, we didn't have to report on property taxes because, as we all know, whether it's good years or bad years, you pay the same property taxes. They don't really adjust that way. So that kind of thing stays pretty static. Most of our other revenues, especially general fund, water and sewer type revenues, those are a whole different animal as well. They're not pandemic related, bad downturns in the economy, et cetera. So just a reminder, this is a reflection of those revenues, and these are good indicators of the economy, the local economy beginning to come back to life and return. That's a very good thing, but it's not a fiscal assessment of the whole city by any stretch. The other thing I wanted to add in, under the sales taxes, we haven't been able to define it. It's been very, very recent, but during the last fiscal year, there was a couple of months where the internet sales tax started to get remitted. The state a while back adopted a new act that collected sales tax on internet orders. It's slightly different than when you go to the store and pay the sales taxes, but it is remitted to local communities. So we believe there's some increase also from that. That's a good thing for the city. It was high time that the internet sales were more equal footing with our brick and mortar stores that we want to support locally. So that's a good thing, but that's also in there someplace too. Good thing for the city, all good signs of a returning economy, but I wanted to make sure we stay in perspective because we're going to talk in a minute about future reporting and all we're trying to do a little differently. Thank you.
Thank you for those clarifications. Let's take a moment. Are there thoughts, questions, comments? One thing I want to point out is that Kevin has asked us for some feedback here on the last page of the memo. He's requesting input from the committee on the format of the information that he's presented so that he can give us their next periodic financial update, which we expect to be issued in September for fiscal year information through August of this year. So if we can give him some input, how did we like this? What would we like to change? Is there different information that would help us to make our decisions going forward? Please chime in. Well, my reaction, just to get it started, was that this was about what I needed from you. I think the long-term trends where we can see how big of a gap we are, how much in the hole we are from where our revenues used to be, even just over the past 2 years to compare, is really very helpful to see that, you know, yes, we've taken a hit, and yes, there are some areas where there's a positive trend and there's progress and things are starting to rebound, and yet overall, you know, the total size of the pie is a little smaller, and we need to be aware of that to see the big picture on our financial decisions. And also, one thing that's very interesting here is just how much volatility there still is. You know, I'm sure that's a little hard for us to wrap our heads around, but you know, things are not flat. Things are not like the electric tax in general. That's not what our taxes look like. Our tax revenues look like in general, but that's really not the picture right now, even if we've been accustomed to slight trends or even the occasional jump when new businesses open. You know, that's just not what we're working with right now. We've got a lot of volatility going on. So that was very useful to get out of these charts. I think that helps me with some of these pictures in my mind about the gaps in between the lines. I think that's a very good way for staff to depict for us, you know, just how far back we still are and how much of the way we've made it back towards normal. So I think that's a real useful way of looking at it, more so than just lists of numbers. Anyone else have thoughts? Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. This is never a cut in stone, the way we do this report. If you remember last year, even the financial updates, we got more input through the summer. Kevin and I were, Kevin, with my input, but Kevin did the work, adjusted the form and format and added the charts so we can make adjustments as we go forward. We come back in 2 months and there's something else or before that that somebody thinks of. If you give us that input, if it can be done, we'll try to make those adjustments and tweak it. I'm a devout incrementalist, so we can make those changes as we go along. Appreciate the input. Just FYI, Kevin and I are meeting with some folks from another town that seem to have some financial reporting down this week to get some ideas and thoughts on how we might improve this also. So we're still working on it going forward for financial updates. And we also intend to bring this up with the long-range financial planning work group folks. So Alderman Wilson and Alderman Goodman, you're still going to get more opportunities, and then we can, because we tend to be more focused, of course, by the nature of that group on these types of things, and see if there's some other thoughts on how we could adjust this going forward. We want to make sure it's a meaningful document. So again, our goal is always to make sure the council has good information that's easy to comprehend and understand. The public can see it too, but the council needs that information so they can make informed decisions. So thank you very much. And we will keep working on this for the 2 months from now for the next update.
Alderman Anderson, I see your hand. You're very small on my screen now.
That I think, there's 2 questions that are being asked or answered. I think these graphs are really helpful. Pandemic, hopefully we don't have another one of those for a long time. And we're all trying to see, what does it look like as we emerge from the pandemic? None of us know what these trends are going to be. And so I think these are incredibly helpful so we can start to either be confident or not confident of how economic activity is going to impact the funds. So I think that's really helpful. But then I appreciated the report where, then the next question is, we made a whole bunch of assumptions when we wrote the 22 budget. And so just understanding, were we conservative or aggressive during that budget? And, it appears so far, it seems that we've been fairly conservative in what we assumed. And I think that's great. I think that's in our DNA and our nature. But I think it's really both those questions remain relevant.
Thank you. And then I saw Alderman Davalos's hand next.
Yes, I just had a question about information going forward. I saw again in the weekly report that they've earmarked about $1.8 million from these rescue plans, all this, that we have a chance to receive over the next couple of years. And just, it'd be nice to be kept up on what either, staff is thinking, or some of the groups that are looking at the financial stability of some of these funds are thinking about, where does that fill in the gaps and what are we going to do? It's not like I don't think anybody knows right now exactly, but as that information and those decisions begin to happen, it would be nice to, begin to see those. Because I think about it occasionally about what's going to happen here and what gaps are going to be plugged up. And anyway, so that's my only comment. Thanks. This has been really good. I love the graphs. They are so helpful.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that's an excellent point, Alderman Davalos, that there's several different funds being impacted by these different revenue sources. It's not just the EMRP or the CMRP. The general fund is very impacted, and the hotel fund. So yeah, there's a lot of different moving pieces here. But let's go to Administrator Coakley to try and get some answers.
Okay, actually, I think I'll stick with the reporting and then get back to Alderman Davalos's question. There's a sheet at the very end of this material that shows an example from a financial update that the finance director provided. It's dated, it's page 1 of 10, and the top of the page just says local economic indicators through 12/31/20. And then on the back page, it includes how we are compared to updates with revenue and all. I think what I'm hearing is it's probably a melding of this. This is one page from a report you'll have in I think it's September of 2020 is the last time that you would have had this report. This one's from. There's some different months that you would have had it. I'm getting my dates mixed up. Sorry. That's when we can start reporting that kind of information. Then they're periodically given to the council. But if we can meld that with some graphs and trend analysis that you can see, that sounds like what you would like to have. And we're going to vet that through that long range financial planning work group. So I don't have to keep talking about it and thinking out loud here. I think Kevin wants to chime in on that. And then I want to go to Alderman Davalos's question if we can.
All right, Finance Director Dahlstrom, please.
I just wanted to reiterate what the administrator said. This is only a couple of pages out of about a 16-page report or so. I will remind you that the actual full report does have the graphs in them. and has the trends that these same graphs that I showed you tonight. It's those same types of graphs that are in that report. That's always been included in there. So we include the numbers and the graphs so that you kind of can relate the two to each other and see what they mean to each other. So we'll continue to do that. We'll include them both. And I realize that beyond me, probably nobody likes to look at the numbers all that much, and the graphs help. But I think it's helpful when we present them both, so you can actually see sort of where those things derive from and how a graph ends up the way it does.
I mean, just on a personal note, I think having the numbers helps because, you know, you see a graph and you see a gap on it, but without an absolute number, it's hard to know if this gap is significant compared to another graph where, you know, a small thing may be many more dollars if the change is a lower percentage of the total. But, you know, we might be down $10,000 in one and $1,000 in another. So it might be a lot more important. So having some absolute numbers helps me. But yes, I realize not everybody liked looking at spreadsheets like you and I, Kevin. We'll go back to Administrator Coker.
Thank you. You both did a better job of explaining it than I did. And I should have mentioned, I suggested we not include that whole 16-page report out of saving paper, but you all have copies from the past, and we'll be looking at that and then provide something like that in the future. Thank you. To the Alderman Davalos's question, there is certainly additional money that we are anticipating receiving. We have finally found out in the last, it was Thursday or Friday last week, when the state of Illinois announced that I think we're one of the last states in the country that created a system so the smaller towns like Warrenville can actually access the money the federal government has already put out and appropriated. We will get approximately 1.8 something odd amount of money over the 2 years. Kevin is working on applying for it this very week. We might get our money, this year's allocation, as early as, they're saying, the end of August. I'm not sure it'll move that quickly, but within the next couple of months. And then we would receive the next allocation, or they call it tranche, anyway, a year from now. So that's very good news. That's the ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act, and we are entitled to it. The big cities, Naperville, Aurora, Wheaton, DuPage County even, have received that money about 2 months ago. Month and a half ago. It was just waiting for a mechanism to be set up. So that will help. We are working with the long range financial planning. Is going to sound like the hardest working group right now, and might be true. I'm not sure. But anyway, we'll be working with them to make recommendations to the council. We anticipate that we'll have recommendations for you in September at the Public Safety and Finance Committee meeting. We have several years to spend that money. We want to make sure that we get some input in. We've already done some preliminary thinking, but we finally have the exact dollar amounts that we will get and a way forward to actually get it. And we know with certainty that we should be able to acquire that money within the next 45 to 60 days. So that's more things to work on forthcoming.
Yeah, that's definitely good news. Alderman Wilson.
To that is, that's why with this potential money coming in, that's why the graph to me is so important. It's not just the dollars and cents. It's the graph relative to each one of those areas that we're looking at. And that's going to give us a lot of insight as to where we can best put that money that we will be getting, where it can do the most good and the most effective use for it in the future. And that's why I think it was important. I thank you, Kevin, for that graph too, because I love to see graphs and not numbers themselves just stick out there. When you can see the relativity between where it was, where we are, and now we can look for where we want to be. And that's a good opportunity for us now to look deeply into what we want to do with the assets of the money that we're going to have. So again, thank you, Kevin, and your staff for, I think, a tremendous report.
Okay, are there any other comments? I want to make sure I check in with Alderman Anderson again, because sometimes it's been hard to see if he's raising his hand.
No, nothing further.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, this was an informational only item again. There's no motion required. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is consideration of an ordinance to allow video gaming. And we'll start with Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. In your packet is a proposed or a draft ordinance As directed at the last committee of the whole meeting, the public safety, and that's this one. It's a public works one in June that we had. The consensus was to direct staff to work with the attorney. Based on the input you gave us that night, we believe that we have captured the concerns and the interests that were expressed. Just a quick history, very quick history of the discussions with the council. Video gaming has been discussed at the June 14th Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. Now I can read it in my notes. Also at the April 12th, Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. And then previously have been discussed in 2013 at a couple of meetings and in 2009 when video gaming was first allowed by the state. In 2009, the council voted to prohibit video gaming. In 2013, some of our businesses, some are represented tonight, and organizations had requested the city council consider it. It did not move out of committee that year, so it has sat. Basically, the proposed ordinance that you'll find in the packet does several things. It amends the city code in a number of different areas. We believe it again addresses concerns and interests that were raised by the various aldermen. It would allow video gaming in Warrenville. It would create a new Class V liquor license, which would be in addition to the eligible classes that a business would currently hold. The Class V liquor license as proposed in the ordinance would be restricted to a total of 6 only. The Class V license requires the establishment to be in business for 1 year prior to applying. So someone can't come in a week before they want to apply, open a business quickly, or intend to maybe not even have a business yet and apply for that license. You have to be an existing business. There are also signage restrictions and requirements that are included in the section on the liquor license code. Another section of it applies to the video gaming terminals. The city would create use its home rule authority to create a $1,000 annual license for each video gaming terminal, and that would be an annual renewal requirement. To apply or even be eligible for that license, the business must already have or requires the Class V liquor license. So you have to have both. You have to have the Class V license before you can have video gaming in town. The maximum number of terminals on any one location is governed by state law. We can't change that. It's a maximum of 6 per location. They may have less, but they cannot have more than 6. The ordinance amendments would prohibit what are referred to as video gaming cafes or storefronts or what have you. Video gaming cannot be the primary purpose of a business. It has to be an existing or have food service or a bar that is in town. It can't just be for video gaming with basically snacks on the side. There's also some requirements of the floor ratios for the type of other services they have versus video gaming. And there's a section of specific fines for violations that would apply to video gaming. There was a lot of questions about revenue. Now, we cannot predict exactly for some of them. You can predict what the license fees would be for liquor license and for the video gaming terminals because that's spelled out in the code, but it all depends how many businesses apply and how many would actually qualify and receive them and how many video gaming terminals each business would want to have. But we did come up with a range, and thank you, Kristen, who did a lot of that work with the previous meeting. So the revenue breakdown is as follows. It's in the summary of the agenda packet, but just to kind of pull it together, gaming revenue would be a range. This is based on our estimates. It also depends how many people actually come and play the games and participate in gaming. Somewhere between $47,900 to $61,000. That's the state share that we would get if we allow video gaming and there's terminals in town. It's split between the terminal operator that provides machines, the business that actually has the machines, and the city gets a share of it. Our share is that range that we can estimate right now. And that's based on Kristen's research with other towns and what they were receiving, and we think similar type towns in our area. From the Class V liquor license, assuming all 6 establishments apply and receive that license, that would be $12,000 to the city each year. Based on the interest expressed from Kristen's survey that was done, The video gaming terminal license fees would be $21,000 to $28,000 range annually. It depends on how many terminals they have in their facility. And then the total, just to total those up, it would be a range of $80,000 to about $101,600 that we're projecting. Admittedly, our numbers may be somewhat conservative, but it's based again on the interest that was expressed from our local businesses, establishments. I keep saying businesses, but includes a VFW that was part of that. So please understand that. And that they would, based on the number of terminals that they had suggested they would be interested in, anywhere from, I think it was 3 to 6, depending on the type of business. There may be future businesses that come up that we are not aware of, and the council has control over the number of Class B liquor licenses, which would be the controlling item on how many could be allowed in town. Just like the other liquor licenses, you may reduce that or you may increase it. If someone closes their business and they had one of those, you can reduce it by 1. You can also increase it if there's someone that you're that seems, I guess that applies and you're interested in expanding that. So for that, I'll answer any questions. We also asked Kristen to be here tonight, our Public Works Management Analyst, because she did a lot of research, and if there's questions, she may be able to answer them as well. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Alderman Ashour.
My concerns is, when we had talked about this before, there was little discussion about the cost of the liquor license addition. That seems high to me. I mean, the reason this was proposed was to give the businesses an opportunity to be more successful and raise revenue for the city. And it can't be just a revenue source for the city. It has to allow the businesses to flourish also. It is a cooperative thing. I think since they're already paying, in some cases, some pretty high liquor license fees already, this seems like it's probably double what it should be. The other thing we had talked about that I didn't see reflected in the proposed ordinance or all the fine print was that the licenses for the machines, it was suggested at that meeting that the license fee be paid by the machine provider rather than the owner of the business. That's something that was shown in the backup that we had, that several of the communities were actually, that the provider of the machines is in it to a big degree, and they just they have probably the least risk and the most benefit. And this is a way of shifting some of that responsibility to the machine owner rather than the people who own the establishment that chooses to have them. So my 2 recommendations would be to cut the V license in half and to shift the responsibility for the license fees to the machine owner. And that would also go back to, that's going to be who's responsible for trying to sneak a machine in. So that's also who would be paying the fees and penalties along with the owner of the bar or the restaurant that would have them.
Okay, well, the city attorney isn't here to answer questions about whether that change about reflecting who pays the fee can be in the ordinance. So is that something we should ask her after the meeting? City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. It can be either way, and we can certainly get the attorney's opinion well, prior to whichever meeting you want to bring this to. If it's not ready, it doesn't have to go to the council meeting. It can come back to another committee. And let me start with, this is why it's a draft agenda. We want that input and feedback because we heard a lot of input a couple of weeks ago and not sure we got it all right. We did discuss that, and in the liquor license fees, we were looking at what the various fees were and came up with that number. And in fact, I'm trying to find it in front of me, but you're suggesting it'd be half. I think it was
1,000
liquor license. The video gaming terminal license is 1,000. Is the liquor license also 1,000? I made all my notes and now I'm, okay. So you're suggesting 500 to be half.
Actually, I was suggesting 1,000.
This is
It shows
I'm sorry, I heard wrong.
$2,000.
I'm trying to talk and read at the same time, but chewing gum, I might fall right off my chair. So thank you. We can note that. The second thing on the terminal fee, that can certainly go back. I know that you had commented on that. There was discussion about who pays that. Some other towns had half of it paid by the business, half of it paid by the terminal operator, the vendor that provides those. We thought that was, or just in discussing with the attorney, seems almost untenable, trying to get both to come up and pay at the same time. It can be put on, there's no legal prohibition from having the terminal operator or the vendor pay that. Our concern was, and thank you for bringing that up because I meant to discuss that, that is going to put if the terminal operator doesn't pay that in a timely manner, the business cannot get their terminals or start that until they get that. They can't get the local license until that's paid. So that would hold up the local business. That takes it out of their control, but it also shifts the cost. So we were trying to balance that particular concern, and it can be done any way that the council wants to do it. We can make that change.
okay. And I mean, I do see a page in the backup material, not for this meeting, but the last time we talked about this, where it lists a whole bunch of other communities and what they had for their amounts. So, I mean, I'm assuming that's where we got some of our numbers from. And I don't know if
That was a Bartlett
Analyst
survey, some of
Youngmeyer
that
can
came
talk
from there.
about that.
Yeah, in regards to the licensing fees, in a past agenda, those were, Bartlett had recently increased their fees actually. So that was taken from a survey Bartlett had done, but there were, communities that were nearby. And I guess just using them as an example, they do split. I believe they've now, I think they're doing 500 and it had 250 coming from the establishment and 250 from the operator. I believe they've increased it to 1,000, where the operator is paying 750 of that, and it's due at when the application is turned in, and the fees need to be submitted before any of the paperwork can be processed. So.
That's right. So it actually wasn't 50-50 after they made the change, right? It was 75-25. So the operator was expected to pay the 750 and the establishment. I mean, that's just one example, but they have a list of other communities with somewhat different numbers, and the numbers that are in the resolution are sort of in the middle of those, or one of the more common figures in that list.
And it did seem like, I know Carroll Stream recently increased theirs. And from what I understand, in talking to other communities, with the revenues that come, this wasn't a huge burden. But they've also been, in operation for a while. So that's something to consider as well. However you start up, you could increase it or change it later, should you, move forward with this.
Sure, that's certainly true. Alderman Krishel.
Can you remind me again where the fees go in relationship to the profits from the local municipality share? Is it what fund it goes to, or is it the same?
I'm sorry, do you mean the city fund that it goes to, or how it's divvied up by the state?
When it comes to us, where would it go?
We are intending, council has to approve that yet, to have put the gaming revenues, and I would suggest all the revenues related to all of these in the capital maintenance replacement fund.
So fees included?
I would recommend fees included. We hadn't really talked about that yet, but I would suggest.
Okay.
That's different from our normal fees. They usually go in the general fund, but I would suggest we put all of that in the capital maintenance replacement fund.
Okay. And one more thing. I agree with Alderman Ashour. I think the liquor license classifications that would be allowed to have a Class V. The Class V is actually, double or, close to it on some of these license fees. And I think it should be more of an auxiliary license rather than a primary license fee. So I'm in favor of maybe making that 1,000 instead of 2,000 for the same reasons.
Okay, other questions? Back to, well, let's do Alderman Davalos first and then back to Alderman Ashour.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. 70% of this revenue goes to the video terminal operators and to the businesses that have these terminals. Is there any data out there to know how that's split up? Is it 50-50 or does anybody really?
I do believe it's 50-50, 35 to the business and 35 to the operator.
Okay. And I know in the packet that you passed out for the committee of the whole meeting, there was information about the cities that did have video gaming and what some of the challenges were and what they were thinking and the benefits and that. There's quite a few cities here very close to us. Most of the cities close to us do not have video gaming. And was there any, like, if I read the list, it's things like Bolingbrook, Burr Ridge, Downers, Glen Ellen, Hinsdale, Lisle, Naperville, Oakbrook, Schaumburg, Wayne, West Chicago, Wheaton, and Winfield. All do not have video gaming. Anything in your research or discussions that would get feedback from these communities on why, was there a general consensus on why they chose not to do this? I mean, we all went through the pandemic. I'm sure people are looking for funds. Did you find anything out about that or have a chance to do that?
I have not reached out to the nearby communities that do not have it. I will say, in looking at the communities that do have it, when I was researching when they passed it, it did seem to be a theme of kind of similar to you guys. There was, just first hesitation on the impact it'd have on the community, the character, crime. It's a new, with when it's first initiated, you don't really know what's going to happen. But then they did, and again, another theme, over time, a lot of businesses were voicing, wanting to be competitive and that it would help, it would just, help them bring people in. And so many councils, again, seem to be a theme that they removed the ban to just support the local economy and businesses. I can reach out to nearby communities that don't have it to see what they're thinking, if that is of interest.
Well, it's just, I don't want to make any more work for staff. You guys have worked a long time on this. It just, as I'm looking at this list and thinking about this whole topic and the amount of staff time, and maybe since we'll be one of the few communities in this area of ours, everybody around us almost does not have it. And so I just worry about police time. I worry about just all these things cross my mind. So that's why I was sort of asking. There's a lot of communities that don't have it, and they just must have some sort of reasons, and some are very similar to us. So that's all I was just trying to get my arms around. My other, it's not really a comment. It's just, oh no, a thought. We talked about this at the last meeting being pro-business, and well, maybe it is a question. I went home and I thought, is it really pro-business? Now, it certainly is advantageous to these 6 organizations and businesses, of which I support a lot of them and want them to succeed. That's not, but I think, I just wonder if you found out any information of other businesses in a community. Do they ever suffer significant revenue losses, or people going to video gaming places and they don't go to another establishment where they could eat, and they could never have video gaming because they're under a corporate structure and the corporate organization is saying no, so they couldn't even choose it if they wanted to? I don't know. I just, it's going to be what it's going to be. I mean, competition is allowed. And so But I just wonder if we can really call this a pro-business. It may really hurt some of our businesses a little bit. I don't know. Was that ever in anything you read or feedback?
I didn't read any information on it negatively impacting businesses. I believe it was Bloomingdale did make a note of all the establishments that had video gaming from the beginning are still around. So it seems to, if they were struggling or needed a boost, that seemed to be beneficial for them. I feel like I do remember reading a few comments or getting some feedback on, there was worry about like the presence of it, but for some communities, they feel like it's almost invisible, like it is there, but it doesn't stick out as much as maybe they were anticipating it to.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking, I just want us to go in this with our eyes open and realize for the amount of money that we're expected to make on this. And of course it is every year. It's not just a one-time, which is important because you have to fund things every year. But I was again reading in the weekly report, we got $60,000 from one building permit fees at one of our complexes, apartment complexes. And I just hope that for what's going to be involved with staff time and what this is going to look like, that Warrenville's the only town in our area that's going to have it. I just want us to think about it with our eyes open. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Ashauer, and then we'll go to Alderman Anderson.
Just wanted to reiterate a little bit. I mean, based on what we were told about what the vendor that furnishes the machine share of the income is, I think it would not be beneficial for them to avoid payment for the tax on their machines. They have probably more to lose than the actual business owner. I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, when this topic originally came up, I started where Alderman Avalos was, where I wasn't quite sure it was the right fit. However, from the analysis done by staff, and then when I look at a Woodridge and other towns that I think are like us, it kind of mirrored the comment earlier of it's not really created a meaningful impact to the gestalt of the town. Sorry, Kristen, I think I just paraphrased you, but so I just don't. So I got comfortable. Okay, we're going to do this. Especially the organizations that are asking for this, I think they're a good fit for those organizations. And I think the way this ordinance is drafted, it protects us from businesses that probably aren't what we're looking for. So I think the staff's done a really great job. I agree with Alderman Ashauer. I think looking at those that have mature programs that are now raising their fees are different than an initial program where we're trying to help everybody get off the ground and get started. This isn't about the first couple of years. This is about creating something that works over time. So finding the right split, I don't know what it is. I tend to agree with Alderman Ashauer that likely the supplying company has the greater resources and would be motivated to participate. So I don't think we should, I think we should make sure we're within the normal benchmarks, but if 50-50 is normal, or even 75-25 is normal, we should lean into that. But I would ask staff to just figure out what the standard is to develop the recommendation, and then not go in near the top on fees, but rather go in on what normal entry fee levels are, understanding that, over time, if this is successful, years 3, 4, et cetera, that those fees may go up, is probably where I start.
Thank you. I have a couple of specific questions, and then we'll go to the mayor. One has to do with a couple of the different classifications of liquor licenses where staff has said that video gaming is allowed versus some of the other ones where they've said that video gaming is going to be prohibited. So just sort of flipping through from class A1 down, I see that, for instance, In A6, a banquet room facility, the staff has said that A6 licenses are going to be ineligible for supplementary Class B licenses. But then in A8, which is a movie theater, it says that they are eligible. So I thought that was a little strange. I would like to ban video gaming at the movie theater. I think our very limited and carefully tailored alcoholic license that was created for the movie theater at their request, and that in a way was supposed to minimize the impact of that liquor license on children because of the very large number of children who like to go to movie theaters, strikes me as that's maybe not the right kind of place to allow video gaming. So I would change that particular one to ban movie theater licenses for liquor license to also be eligible for supplemental Class B licenses. You know, you look down some of this list, and one of the things that we had talked about as well had to do with whether there would be a food requirement. I can see here that the staff went with the choice of not making a food requirement, but I think that's a policy choice that maybe we should discuss as a council, whether or not we're in favor of having a food requirement for the video gaming license as part of the liquor license. But because I know we have businesses in town that don't sell food, that are bars, that I think are interested, that would affect particular businesses in town. I don't like saying, okay, well, if it's all right for this business, we should make the law general. I'd like to have a general policy in place and then apply it to the specific businesses involved, if that makes sense. There's also a couple of technical questions that I wanted to discuss, or maybe have my questions passed on to the city attorney. For instance, there's a little section that she's added here with language either making the license eligible or ineligible in each category, but she left that out of section K for Class E licenses. So I think that needs to be added out and spelled out explicitly here like the rest of the sections. It's section K, but it's for Class E liquor licenses. I'm pretty sure that was her intention because Class E is not listed as an eligible license in the new section L that she's added, but I just think it should be spelled out explicitly like all the rest of them are. And my other technical question for the city attorney would be whether video gaming cafes need to be defined. I believe the city administrator said that a video gaming cafe is one where the primary purpose of the business is video gaming. And that seems like a good definition. I think that's also spelled out in one of the earlier memos from the city attorney, but I didn't see it here in the ordinance. And I think it might be a useful definition to have in the ordinance unless there's some reason the city attorney specifically left it out. So if you could just pass those couple technical questions on to her. But more the policy questions, I think, for the council that I would have if anyone has an opinion or wanted to weigh in, was whether or not we should discuss a food requirement and whether we think the movie theater liquor license should allow video gaming along with it. Because as the Alderman Davalos's comment about we already do have some large entertainment businesses in town, so there could be potential competition there. I could see them feeling pressured if other businesses in town have it. I could see them saying, well, maybe they would want it too. That may depend upon decisions at a large parent company level. I don't know. But when people think of video games, they might think of Main Event. That's certainly the kind of video games most people are talking about when they use that phrase rather than slot machines. So Main Event doesn't come necessarily under the movie theater license, but you know, we don't want to cannibalize our existing good, strong businesses here in town. So I just think that's something that we should be considering as part of this. So, you know, these are policy issues for the council, and I don't know if anybody else has thought about these things, but if you have any initial reactions, I'd be interested to hear them. But I think the mayor wanted to go next.
Thank you. Mention was made that a lot of our neighbors do not have video gaming, but Aurora has a program, and so does, get closer. Aurora and Carroll Stream both have video gaming, and I know talking to the mayor of Carroll Stream, he's very happy with how that's worked out for them. I would be interested to know what they did right from the beginning, have our staff talk to their staff to say, when you started, what did you get right? What would you have done differently? How did this evolve over time from when you started to where you're at now? And what important things consideration should be made in initiating the program, because there's already 2 communities close to us that are doing this, and they've been doing it for some time. So it seems to me we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel for everything. We should be able to get some advice from them. That would make sense to me. So that I would find that helpful to know what they liked about the program, and especially in terms of the fees. Did they start with low fees and then raise the fees? Did they start with fees that they were too low, that they determined that the whole program should be a lot higher? How did that work out? That would inform us into making the decision about how we start out with our fees too. That would, I think, be very useful.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Wilson next.
Alderman Wilson turned his mic on.
I'm sorry. I just see that what we've requested to do is to recommend the city council adopt an ordinance
Can you move it a little closer?
allowing video game in the city of. Holy mackerel. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. My voice isn't too strong anyway. I was just reading what our action is required. According to the recommend the city council adopt an ordinance allowing video gaming in the city of Warrenville with specific fees and restrictions. It does not specify all the fees and restrictions, but it's allowing video gaming in the city of Warrenville. I think that's the question that we have to answer tonight, as to whether or not we're going to allow it. And then the fees and the restrictions, and the attorney can get involved in working out the details on it. I don't think it's us sitting here trying to determine all the fees and all the restrictions, limitations, and requirements. So I just wonder if we can call the question and find out whether we want to allow it in the city of Warrenville.
Okay, we'll go to City Administrator Coakley next.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to start. I appreciate all the input. That's why the draft ordinance is on there. I wrote the action requested thinking maybe you're all ready, we've got it just right, but I knew that probably wasn't the case. So we need that input and direction. I'm hearing a lot of different comments, from doing more research to specifics, that we have a couple of aldermen want the liquor license reduced, put the terminal fees on the video gaming vendor, et cetera. Can we get some of those in a motion so we know that the whole council or the whole committee tonight is in favor of that? Would be very helpful, because we can take all this input and come back again. But in my view, with all due respect, we did that the last 2 meetings and worked with the attorney. I get we had a couple of things that we made some decisions on that don't quite work, like the amount of the licensing fee. That's fairly simple, and who should pay. But I want to make sure that the majority is in favor of that. If you want more research from other communities, I think Kristen has a lot of that. She did some more follow-up research. We weren't sure that was needed, but she does have some more information from some of the communities that do allow video gaming on things that they learned as they went through the process. We can bring all that back and share it. We can even have the attorney attend the meeting. We normally don't do that for committee meetings because it might be under the retainer, it might be an extra fee. Again, we thought we had some of this down. It's okay that we don't. It doesn't have to be done tonight. There's nothing the world will not stop revolving if we don't get this on the next council agenda by any means. But I want to make sure that we have down what the majority wants so that we can move that ahead. Is we've also taken the last 2 votes to move this further, that the council majority is interested in video gaming under the right circumstances. Nobody voted on a final action any of those last meetings. But I want to be sure that we're in the right direction, because if we come back in 2 weeks or in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we might still be slightly off, and this could go on for a while. We want to make sure we're getting it the way you all want it collectively. So there's a number of things that were motioned. The simplest were cutting the liquor license fee in half to 1,000, putting the video terminal fee on the vendor, not the business. And I was trying to make notes on a lot of the other things. If we could try to get those into a motion, would be helpful.
Alderman Ashour.
I'd like to recommend the city council adopt an ordinance allowing video gaming in the city of Warrenville with specific fees and restrictions, which would include consideration of reducing the Class V license from $2,000 to $1,000, and any licensing fees on gaming machines would be paid by the gaming machine provider rather than the operator of the establishment.
So your motion is that 100% of all the licensing fees be paid by the operator. So your motion is that 100%, you just said all of the licensing fees be paid by the operator.
Video gaming.
That's your motion. Alderman Krischel.
Are you referring to all the fees or just the terminal fees per machine? That's right.
But 100% of the terminal fees is what you said.
Yes, that's right.
That's the motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Ashour and a second by Alderman Krischel.
Madam Chairman, are we allowed to ask a clarifying question?
Please do, Alderman Anderson.
Is Kristen allowed to give us any insight of, in her benchmarking, is that a standard practice, what we're proposing here? Or is it something that she's seen? Because what I'd heard was the split concept, so I was there. I just don't know, do other towns do what we're proposing here? Can't do that?
From what I've reviewed, it's been split. It hasn't been 100% on one, or hasn't been 100% on the operator. We can look into that, but from what I was researching, I think there still is a share in the fee.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Yes, Alderman Widener next.
So we have a number of questions remaining, and that would be whether the operator will accept paying 100% of the fee. So that's a question we can't answer tonight. We were also going to gain a definition of video gaming cafe that hasn't been addressed yet. And then there was the questions on the food requirement. And I'm not sure if I'm missing anything else, but I'm just trying to capture all the items that we either want in a motion or that we want staff to go back and research some of the additional questions or concerns that we had. I don't know if I captured them all, but I think that's worthwhile to have that in our discussion here before we vote on the motion.
I mean, I had one more, which was whether the movie theater liquor license should have an ancillary V license or not. So I think Alderman Davalos had asked about reaching out, because most of the reach that you had done was to cities that had this kind of license, and you had asked about reaching out to cities that don't, or businesses that are affected.
Yeah, I just wondered if that had happened. I'm not necessarily requesting that you do that if you haven't already done it. I mean, at some point, I just think it would be interesting, but I'm not really asking. There's so much going on for staff right now. I'm not asking them to do that. I just wondered if anecdotally, and you did address it a little bit, anecdotally, you know, there are a lot of communities not doing it, and a lot of them are around us. And I just find that interesting. And so I think they have enough to research without that. I mean, I could try to do it on my own, I suppose, but I'm not asking for that. I'm just wondering about it.
Okay, the mayor was next.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that maybe change the motion to say that there would be a split without determining that it's 100% right off the bat. If none of the other communities are requiring 100%, there must be a reason for that. At least take a look at it and let staff come back with a recommendation based on what the other communities are doing. Maybe a 75-25 makes sense. I think the idea of a split makes sense, but I hate to go 100% right off the bat if that's something that everybody else says, oh no, that's not going to work. It's going to be a problem.
Okay, so yes, City Administrator Coakley is next.
I'm sorry. If the council wishes or the committee wants more research, then we should go do more research. I was specifically asking, there were specific recommendations to modify the ordinance that we could modify and then bring that back, or have the attorney come and talk about those. If you want more research, then we should go do that and then come back and talk about the ordinance. Those are two different things. To spend the attorney's time and staff to try to keep changing the ordinance with a couple of people wanting this and a couple of people wanting that is going to be really going in circles. We need to get some clear direction on what you want. If there's more research needed before you can make those decisions, that's fine too, but that's what I'm looking for, is clear direction to what way you want us to put our resources, our time, and the attorneys. And I can even put this on a council agenda to have the attorney answer more specific legal questions, but to just have a lot of open-ended issues and then come back to the next committee, we will just have a modified version of where we are, and we'll meet some needs and not some others. So I'm trying to see if there's consensus. Again, it's okay if there's not. If you want more information and we need to do more research and bring that back if you're not ready, that's the clarity I'm looking for.
Okay, yes, Alderman Ashour next.
My motion was with consideration of changing the license fee and the fee to the vendor. So it wasn't in stone, but it would move the ordinance ahead.
Yeah, I think we have the motion. Are we all clear on what the motion was? Mayor?
I thought the motion was that the vendor would pay 100%. There was no split.
That's correct, but my comment was with consideration of, meaning that it was what we're trying to do is figure out if we should be spending staff time or not. And if the council approves video gaming, we can answer those questions and move it forward, come back and make the rules.
So your suggestion would be that we approve the decision to allow video gaming, but with more discussion with the city attorney about the language of the ordinance, the numbers in the ordinance, the splits and whether that's legal, and just do more editing of the ordinance after this committee moves it back up to the city council?
Right, we could bring it back to a committee meeting for the changes in the wording of the ordinance.
Is staff comfortable with that, or is that not the sort of direction that you need?
I'm sorry, maybe it's just me. I'm unclear. I understand Alderman Ashour's motion. That's very clear, and that would direct it would move this ordinance with a couple of changes to the council meeting. I'm not sure that's where everybody else is at, because there's a lot more changes that have been discussed than just how those two fees are allocated. So you could, not the parliamentarian, but you could certainly have a vote on that motion and come back and move that ahead. Or if you wish, we can move this whole discussion. You could delay this discussion, postpone this discussion to the council meeting. We'll have Brooke here. We could put on the regular agenda and continue this with more input. But the caveat, if there's more research needed, we need to know that. We wouldn't have it for next Monday. We need to get going on that.
Okay, Alderman Widener.
Yeah, the way I understood the motion is that the operator was going to be foot with 100% of the fee, and I can't vote for that. Maybe we should reread the motion. I'm not against, the continuing process to evaluate and potentially approve video gaming, but I'm not sure that this motion is the one that we want to approve in order to accomplish all the other details that we want to accomplish. So if somebody could reread the motion, I think it'd be helpful.
Or you could make a motion to postpone discussion to the next meeting to give staff time to do research on the issues that have been raised. I mean, that's another motion that could be made by somebody right now,
Okay.
for example.
I don't think the discussion is done on this. I'll defer to Alderman Berry.
Yes, Alderman Berry.
Well, I was just going to basically do what Alderman Widener was recommending, was to actually move this discussion regarding the video gaming to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee meeting of the whole, which is on August 9th, and possibly have the city attorney here virtually. She doesn't have to come to the meeting, but she would be able to answer our questions at that time. But then maybe this would give the alderman time to think about, maybe within the next week, what our true questions are, and give that list to the city administrator. So we could probably have those questions written out for us, and then possibly have a discussion specifically on those specific items. I don't know if anybody's interested in something like that.
Yeah, I think that matches my understanding of where we are in this conversation, but I'm only one alderman. Does anybody want to make that motion and see if the rest of the council is in favor of it?
Can I add a thought? Yeah, my two thoughts are, one, I think what I hear from staff is they're just looking for some guidance from us. I think one guidance that I feel like I'm hearing some level of consensus on is that, but to John's point, we haven't validated that the initial fees proposed tonight feel too high. We would like staff to have a recommendation at a lower fee level, and we would like a recommendation on a different split between the business and the vendor. I feel like those are two things. I don't know if that's research, but I think those are two things I hear us asking. And then I think Alderman Goodman, you brought up a very interesting question. I hadn't thought about the movie theater. Does it make sense for us to actually say where we stand on the movie theater thing, to give staff some guidance on that? Or, because I'm just worried we're going to come back and we're just going to ask that question again. So if there's a way to give folks guidance, or do folks want research around the movie theater? Those are the two things I feel like we might be able to be helpful with staff if we recommend it.
Well, sometimes it's difficult to have an initial reaction to something new. I know nobody had talked about the movie theater license, but it's one of the details that's in this ordinance that we might be approving. So, you know, if anybody has initial reactions on it, I'd like to hear that now, so that maybe we can give staff guidance on that point. My feeling is it should be banned, like many of the other types of liquor licenses, which don't have the V license as an incidental part of it. Just like the banquet facility and many others on this list. But nobody else has weighed in on that issue. We need some initial reactions. Alderman Berry.
From my recollection, I guess the businesses in town were asked if they were interested in having video gaming machines available on their premises, and it was limited to just a few. Two of those businesses are here this evening, actually one business and one basically private club at the VFW. But I don't think at this time that the movie theater was even interested. I don't think that Main Event was interested. If I can get some help from Kristen, We did ask those businesses and they had no interest in it. At this time, maybe we need to remove them from this ordinance and almost use this video gaming thing as how we adjust our liquor licenses in the first place. When a business comes in and says, hey, I want to apply for a liquor license, then they get approved. And then all of a sudden, then, we add to that category. We add a business to that 1A or 2A or whatever it is. Maybe that's the same thing we have to do with a business that would come forward and say, hey, I want a liquor license, but I'm also thinking about doing this video gaming. Well, that's great, but we have something that says you have to wait a year. And then you can come back, and at the same time, we can look at it and then we can add it. Just like we add an additional business to the quantity of liquor licenses in that category. I don't know, does that make sense?
I mean, I think, yes, that makes sense, but I think if you read the fee, the language of the resolution, that's already in each of these sections. So for instance, for class 8A, or A8, I guess, it does say the number of A8 liquor licenses specifically limited to 1. So we only have 1 movie theater. If we have another one sometime, we might change that to 2, I suppose. But then it also added a section 4 that the city attorney put in, allowing them to have class B. Now, she put in a section in many of these other bits prohibiting it. So I just think this needs to be changed to say, in this particular case, it's prohibited. And since they're not interested, as you rightly point out, we've surveyed them, they're not interested. I don't think they will care if we change this. So I think we should change this before we pass it.
But the movie theater could possibly change hands, and it could not be Regal Theater anymore. It could be ABC Theaters, and maybe they want to have video gaming.
And then
so
we could
do they
this.
Come back then and say, hey, I would like to put this in there? Do we leave it open? Do we leave it open? Just leave it open? I don't know.
Well, anyone who wants a change to our zoning ordinance can come and ask us to change our zoning ordinance in any number of ways. So I think that matches what you're saying.
Okay.
But we have to have something in it to begin with.
Okay, well, I guess I'd like to make a motion
All right, Alderman Berry, make the motion.
to, I'd
No.
like to amend, but am I,
You can make a motion to postpone discussion of the motion
Okay.
that's on the table. That's perfectly okay.
right? That's what I would like to do. I'd like to make a motion to postpone the motion that is on the table to
The August 9th?
Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole meeting, which is on August 9th.
Okay, and the idea being that that would give staff time to answer some of these questions that have been raised? All right, Administrator Coakley.
You need a second.
Yes, we do, but
Before you should discuss.
I will second the motion. I think I'm allowed to, yes. Now discussion, Alderman Davalos.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a big agenda that night. It's a big financial meeting. So I guess we just add it, right? Never mind. I withdraw my question.
Administrator Coakley.
Okay, you haven't voted on that yet, but the intent then would be to make sure that our attorney is present at that meeting to answer any questions or address them. We will have from the minutes all of the comments and questions that came up tonight. We have some clear issues that you're looking for. I think there's 4 or 5 that have been made, at least discussed more at length, but there's some others that have been brought up. So we've got all of those. We will have answers to, assuming the motion gets approved, we will bring back whatever we can, answers from the attorney. And again, she'll be there. So we will move all of this forward to that time. Just making sure I have down what we're getting direction for.
Okay, any more discussion? Alderman Widener.
Is staff clear on everything that we're asking for? Do you need to go over your list of what you think we're asking for, and we could take a moment to clarify and get more specific if need be?
I think it's what I was just saying. We're going to have to take the minutes from the meeting to capture all of the questions, because there's been some others about the movie theater, who pays the video gaming terminal fee, cutting the liquor license fee. I know I just missed one that have been discussed at length. I think those are fairly clear, at least that those are concerns. But there was a host of about another, somewhere between 6 and a dozen other issues that came up that we will gather from the minutes and then bring back what we can answer, what the attorney can answer, and clarify. Now, there's a number of legal questions about why this is allowed here and the verbiage there. So we'll have Brooke answer those and attend that meeting. I foresee that will be some more discussion, but we hopefully can narrow down the questions at that point and hone in on moving this forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's at least a couple policy questions on the list. If we want to create a food requirement, we need to say that. We need to vote on that. The city attorney can't, or staff can't answer that for us. So, I mean, it's one of the items that's a policy decision by the council. So if it's not something we've thought about, then that's something we all need to think about. And either if we don't have a clear answer on it now, we need to have a clear decision on what we think about it when we come back to discuss it the next time. Yes, Mayor.
I still think it'd be valuable to have information from Carol Stream and Aurora. They have programs that are up and running. I'd like to know what their specifics are in terms of the things that you're considering and you're worried about. What are they doing? How much is their fee? How does that compare to their other fees? That would be a phone call to an administrator, I would think, to get some information. But again, they're close neighbors. They're right next to us. It would be good to know what they're doing.
Okay, Alderman Krischel.
Well, just one last question on timeline. So the next Public Works and Infrastructure Committee meeting on the 9th, we could potentially agree to that ordinance draft and bring it to the council meeting on the 16th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this motion, or is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. We will move this item along. Okay, that is item number 5. We move on to item number 6, which is our standard informational updates on the work plans and decision packages. This is a chance to ask staff any questions on any of that. Okay, I don't see any hands. Alderman Widener.
Yeah, I just had a question on the law enforcement section regarding the bicycle patrols. And I just understand that that is going to be reactivated. Is that correct?
Chief Toronto, are you available?
I'm sorry, Alderman, part of it cut out. I heard about information on bicycle patrols.
Yes, as I understood, it was going to be reactivated. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we're back up and running. We did have the over the 4th of July weekend, we did not do anything. We did have a couple of rainy days in the week prior to that, so that we weren't out. But yeah, we will be up and running again on Saturday and Sunday, usually in the late morning, early afternoon hours in the neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's all
welcome.
I had.
Thank you. My only question was also for you, Chief. I know we've purchased the Officer Warren body cameras, correct? Or I mean, I suppose licensed them. And it says the completion of that is in August. There wasn't any information about that sort of at the neighborhood roll call that I attended, or I mean, I haven't really heard any communication from the police department about that. Is this something that we're going to be talking about with the community or publicizing in any way?
We just got the information last week, Alderman. Excuse me. We have a manufacturer's liaison from Axon coming to the police department on August 6th. They will be doing the training on all of the redaction software and also training our supervisors, who will in turn train their troops on the use and how to store the data. We did have to wait a little bit, and the reason being is that there was some language in the trailer bill with the Police Accountability Reform Act that was signed by Governor Pritzker. That was signed. We did include that into our policy. So we'll be trained on the 6th, and those should be up and running by the 7th or 8th of August. As soon as they're up and running on the street, I'll put a weekly report item out. If we have any more neighborhood roll calls for the year, we'll put that information out, and I'll have a demonstration for the council at the next public safety meeting. We'll have an officer come here and we'll give you a demonstration of the body cams.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mayor.
Chief, just two things. One, on August 14th, the local bike shop is going to have a get together of classic bikes and muscle bikes and racing bikes and all different kinds of bikes. And I think it would be great if we had a police officer there with one of our bikes to show that we're involved with that. So please give that consideration. I could have Jeremy give you a call if you'd like to let you know what the details are and see if that's appropriate for an officer to be there with the bike. And also in the past, I've done that bike patrol with Sergeant Maxwell, I believe. I'd be interested in doing that again. I still have my jersey. So sign me up for a couple of trips around town. I'd love to do it.
Okay, doc, we'll do. Again, just to clarify, it's August 14th?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And Chairman Goodman, just so that you know, and members of the council, Warrenville will be the 7th community in DuPage County that'll have body cameras. So I think that's pretty good considering the number of towns.
Yeah, there's 35 in DuPage County, something like that. All right. Okay, any more comments from anyone else? If not, we've reached the end, except one thing, the commendations. Chief, do you have any that you want to talk about?
Yes, we did have a nice letter of thanks from a resident that went to one of our neighborhood roll calls. It was included in there. They found it very informative. Also a nice email complimenting Corporal Gismondi on his follow-up of a hit and run accident that occurred to the message writer's son at the Lifetime Fitness, where Corporal Gismondi followed up on that and was able to find the driver of that accident. We received some thanks from the city of Naperville for our assistance in the tornado that went through their community earlier this month. Additionally, just a couple of informational things that just came in. On August 5th, I'll appear in front of the DuPage Mayor and Managers Conference to address the issue of officer retention and recruitment. Those are one of the things, thankfully, that we have not had a problem with at our last test. We had 140 people that were in attendance that took the exam, so we've done good with that. Also with the DuPage Merit Multi-Jurisdictional Task Force, we assisted in an officer-involved shooting in Villa Park. We also assisted in a couple of fatal accidents. One occurred in Lyle, one occurred in Clarendon Hills. So our officers have been out, and I think that's one of the reasons we're retaining our officers, is because specialization allows them to get into areas that improve and enrich their career experience. We will also On the 18th of August, have a, excuse me, a meeting with Administrator Coakley, with our EMA coordinator, Michael Spain, and we'll be talking about setting up a tabletop disaster exercise for the city, which allows us to maintain our current SEMP and emergency operations plan status so that we're in compliance with that. And we want that to take place in December. So got a few things cooking that will keep us busy. And that's all I have.
Okay, that's quite a list, Chief. Thank you. Any comments or questions on any of that? All right, thank you. All we need is a final motion. Alderman Krischel.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, Alderman Anderson.
Thank you. See everybody.
Good night.